If you'd told me a year ago that I'd be watching my ex-wife's wedding unravel from thousands of miles away, half amused, half heartbroken, I'd have said you were nuts. But here we are. My name's Aaron. I'm 34. And this story starts with the kind of betrayal that makes your stomach drop and your entire reality crack like cheap glass. Not just the betrayal of a spouse, the betrayal of a whole damn family. Let me rewind a bit. I'm not some flashy guy. I don't make grand entrances. I'm more the bring an umbrella just in case kind of guy. I grew up in Connecticut, middle child of 3, with a mom who loved family dinners and a dad who barely looked up from his laptop. I went to college for engineering, got a job at a mid-sized firm, and met my wife, Claire, at a coffee shop when I spilled a latte on her laptop and nearly fainted from embarrassment. She laughed. I paid for a new one, and 3 years later we were married in the garden behind her parents' house. Small wedding. Just family. Just love. Or so I thought. Claire was, well, is, the kind of woman who can work a room without even trying. Blonde hair, perfect smile, confident in a way that makes people lean in when she talks. She worked in marketing, and she knew exactly how to pitch herself. To clients. To friends. To my family. My mom adored her. My older brother Jason called her the one with the brains, which always rubbed me the wrong way, though I never said anything at the time. Jason had a way of joking that didn't feel like joking. Things started to crack about 2 years into the marriage. At first, it was small stuff. Claire working late more often. Her phone suddenly always face down. Weekend plans canceled last minute with vague excuses. The campaign's running behind, she'd say. The client's in town. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But some nights, she'd come home wearing lipstick she didn't leave the house in, or with the scent of cologne that sure as hell wasn't mine lingering on her clothes. I tried not to be the jealous husband. Tried to trust. And then came the phone call. It was a Tuesday night, around 9:45. Claire was stuck at the office. I was sitting on the couch eating leftover Thai, flipping through channels I wasn't really watching, when her phone rang from where she'd accidentally left it charging in the kitchen. I swear I wasn't snooping. I wasn't even going to touch it. But the caller ID lit up the screen. J. Just the letter. I froze. My stomach tightened. I told myself it was probably Jessica from her team. Or Jamie. Or any number of people. But then it rang again. Same J. And something in me shifted. My instincts, dulled by years of giving people the benefit of the doubt, finally screamed loud enough to get through. I answered. Silence. Then Claire. It was a man. Confused. Calm. I didn't speak. Aaron, he said next. My name. My freaking name. That was the moment I knew. Who is this? I asked, my voice flat. A pause. Then, stupidly, like this was some sitcom and not my life, he said, You weren't supposed to pick up. Click. Claire got home half an hour later. I didn't say anything right away. Just watched her as she kicked off her heels, rummaged through the fridge like nothing was wrong. She didn't even ask where her phone was. I wanted to believe it was all in my head. That maybe he dialed the wrong number. That maybe, God, I don't know. But Claire looked tired. Genuinely tired. Her eyes were glassy. Her blouse was buttoned wrong. And there was a faint red mark on her neck that she didn't bother to cover. The confrontation happened that weekend. I waited until we were both home, until she couldn't use work or friends or anything else as an excuse. I sat her down on the couch and told her I wanted the truth. About everything. She didn't even try to lie. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said. It just did. Her voice trembled, but not with guilt. More like frustration. Like I'd interrupted something. Who is he? I asked. She hesitated. Jason. My brother. My brother. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember throwing the glass in my hand against the wall. All I remember is the sound, the sharp crack of it shattering, and the ringing in my ears. Claire started crying. Or pretending to. I couldn't tell anymore. We didn't mean for it to get serious, she said. But he understands me in a way. In a way I don't. I snapped. She didn't answer. I left that night. Slept in my car for 2 days before crashing at a friend's apartment in Queens. My mom called. A lot. My dad didn't. Jason sent one text that just said, Let's talk like men. I never replied. The divorce moved fast, mostly because I didn't fight her on much. I just wanted out. Out of the apartment. Out of the marriage. Out of the country, if I'm honest. 3 months later, I got a job offer in Berlin. A fresh start. I packed 2 suitcases and left without telling anyone but my mom, who cried and begged me to stay. She still believed in working things out. I told her I didn't. Berlin was a blur at first. New city, new job, new language. But it was quiet, peaceful. I didn't have to bump into Claire's friends at Trader Joe's or hear Jason's name at every family dinner. I could breathe. I thought that was the end of it. Until I got an email from my cousin, Caroline, subject line, "Guess who's getting married?" I almost didn't open it. But I did. And there they were, Claire and Jason, smiling in an engagement photo with fake autumn leaves in the background, like some cringy Hallmark ad. The wedding was set for November. In our hometown. I stared at that photo for a long time. And that was the moment I decided I wasn't done. Not yet. Not after what they did. Not after how easily they moved on. Because if Jason thought marrying the woman he stole from his brother would be a fairy tale, I had one message for him. Enjoy it while it lasts. She's got a type. And Jason? He was next. But before I could make the call that would change everything, something happened. And it started with a voicemail from my mother. 3 voicemails, actually. All left within 15 minutes. Each one more frantic than the last. And when I finally listened to the last one, my heart stopped. Because her voice was shaking. And she said one word I didn't expect. Emergency. I listened to that last voicemail 5 times. My mother's voice, usually so calm and collected, maybe even overly so, was cracking. Aaron, please. It's your mother. Something's happened. I know you don't want to talk to us, but this is serious. Please just call me back. It's Jason. It's about Jason and Claire. She said his name like it hurt to say it. I didn't call her back right away. I just sat there in my tiny Berlin apartment, rain tapping against the windows like impatient fingers, trying to decide whether I even cared. I'd spent the last few months detoxing from the emotional dumpster fire they threw me into. I'd started going to therapy. I took long walks along the spree. I learned how to make bread from scratch, for God's sake. I was doing better. But her voice, that crack in her voice, that was new. I finally caved. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Aaron. Yeah, I got your messages. What's going on? A pause. I could hear rustling in the background, like she was walking through the house. They moved the wedding up. What? To this weekend, she said. 3 days from now? It was supposed to be next month, but apparently Claire's pregnant. I went cold. My grip on the phone tightened so hard my knuckles popped. You're kidding. I wish I was. Of course she was. Of course she'd reel in another man with the same trick. Jason was always impulsive. If someone dangled something shiny in front of him, he'd bite. Always had. Mom kept talking, but I wasn't really listening. My brain was spinning. You said there was an emergency. She hesitated. I wanted you to hear it from me. Because Jason's been going around telling everyone that you gave your blessing. I blinked. What? He said you forgave him. That you moved on. That you sent them a letter wishing them well. That you even planned to visit for the wedding. My heart pounded. That's a lie. I know. But Aaron, people believe him. Your aunt called me crying. Said she was so proud of how gracious you've been. Your grandfather asked if you'd be giving a toast. I couldn't even speak. My jaw clenched so tight, I thought my molars might crack. And the worst part, she said. He told Grandma that you were the best man. I hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there, alone in my Berlin kitchen, staring at the cracked tile near the stove that I'd been meaning to fix, and felt something break. This wasn't just a lie. This was a rewrite of reality. They were trying to reframe everything, as if I was the footnote in their love story. As if I had simply bowed out like a gentleman and left the stage so they could have their fairy tale ending. And somehow, my entire family was clapping for them. I didn't sleep that night. I barely blinked. My phone buzzed all night with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Congratulations. How proud they were. How brave I was. Claire had always been good at spin. But this was a new level. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done since the divorce. I opened Jason's Instagram. There it was. A black and white photo of their hands clasped. A small bump just barely visible through Claire's sweater. The caption read, "When you know, you know. Life throws curveballs, but love always wins." Hundreds of comments. Hearts. Clapping emojis. Family members tagging each other like it was a damn holiday card. And then I saw it. My name. Proud of Aaron for being so mature about everything. A true gentleman. That was the first comment. From Claire's mother. I felt sick. They were rewriting me out of the story, painting me as some passive, noble side character who gave up his love willingly. But I wasn't passive. I wasn't noble. I was the guy who had his life ripped out from under him and shoved onto a plane just to breathe again. And now they wanted to put me in a tux and parade me around like the tragic best man? No. I booked a flight. Direct to JFK. Landed Friday night. The wedding was Saturday. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Didn't post anything. I just rented a car, drove to the old town, and checked into a small inn 10 minutes from the venue. And then I waited. The morning of the wedding, I got breakfast at the cafe where Claire and I used to go on Sundays. The same one where Jason once joked he'd steal her if I didn't marry her soon. We all laughed. I remember that clearly. Even now. Even through the rage. The cafe owner, an older Greek guy named Theo, recognized me instantly. Aaron, where have you been? Thought you moved to Europe or something. I did. Back for the wedding? I froze. You know about that? He shrugged. Small town. Word travels. I didn't respond. Just forced a tight smile and paid for my coffee. I didn't want to make a scene. Not yet. Back at the inn, I sat on the bed and stared at my phone. I had Jason's number still. I had Claire's too. I could have done something petty, leaked photos, spread rumors, whatever. But that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted truth. So I called him. It rang 4 times. Then he picked up, sounding rushed and out of breath. Yo, Aaron? You good? My voice was steady. Hey, just wanted to call and say congrats. He was quiet for a second, like he didn't believe it. I mean, I heard you're getting married today, I continued. Heard you even told people I gave you my blessing. Jason laughed, nervous. Hey man, I figured you wouldn't mind. You're in Berlin, starting fresh. No hard feelings, right? No hard feelings, I echoed. Sure. I just wanted to say something before you say I do. What's that? I paused. Let it breathe. Enjoy it while it lasts. He laughed again, more awkwardly this time. What does that mean? She's got a type, I said. Married men. Silence. Not a word. Just breathing. Then I hung up. It was petty. I know it was. But I didn't care. I didn't expect anything to come of it. I just wanted him to know. To feel what I'd felt. That cold slap of betrayal. That pit in your stomach that doesn't go away. But I wasn't ready for what happened next. An hour later, I got a call from an unknown number. Claire. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. And then a text lit up my screen. You need to stop. I didn't respond. Then, 5 minutes later, another call from my mother. I picked up. She was frantic. Aaron, what did you do? What are you talking about? They called off the wedding. I blinked. What? Claire stormed out of the venue. Jason's losing it. There are guests here. People are whispering. Your uncle drove 4 hours. And now she's saying it was all a mistake. My chest tightened. She said that. She said you called Jason. That you told him things. I told him the truth. I said, my voice low. Something none of you seemed interested in hearing. She was silent for a moment. Then, you need to come here. I hung up again. But I didn't drive to the venue. I waited. Night fell. And that's when she called. Claire. Again. I answered this time. What do you want? I asked. She didn't speak at first. Just static on the other end. Then she screamed. A long, shrill, raw scream that didn't sound like her. It didn't even sound human. You ruined everything, she shouted. No, I said. You did that when you slept with my brother. You think you're some kind of hero now, she spat. You think you're better than us? No, I said. But I'm not the one who lied to 100 people just to keep a fantasy alive. You always do this, she hissed. You always make yourself the victim. And that was when I laughed. Because that was the moment I realized. She still didn't get it. She still thought this was about her. She still thought I cared. But I didn't. Not anymore. The fantasy was breaking. And they were the ones left scrambling in the ruins. But the story wasn't over yet. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't come back just to make a phone call. I'd come back for something else. And that part was about to unfold in front of everyone. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. I'd already been through that phase. Rage that kept me awake, fists clenched under the blanket, trying not to scream into my pillow like some teenager dealing with his first breakup. This was different. This time, I was just done. Claire's call had been the final nail. The screaming, the blame, the way she twisted everything into some warped tragedy where I was the villain because I hadn't politely applauded her affair turned fairy tale, it didn't shock me anymore. If anything, it confirmed what I'd known for months but hadn't fully accepted until that moment. I had never mattered to her as a person, just a placeholder, a stepping stone to something shinier. Jason was shinier. Or at least, he used to be. I woke up the next morning to another flood of texts. Some from family members I hadn't heard from since the divorce. Most of them walked the fine line between concern and passive aggression. I don't know what happened, but you really stirred the pot, Aaron. You should have stayed in Berlin if you weren't ready. We were all rooting for a peaceful day. I guess that was too much to ask. Only a few dared to say what they really meant. Why did you ruin their wedding? This isn't your moment anymore. Let them be happy. Let them be happy. As if I'd been the storm cloud above their sunny love story. As if I hadn't been the one left in the rubble, gaslit and cast aside so neatly that people applauded my silence. I didn't respond to any of them. I checked out of the inn without saying a word, tossed my bags in the rental, and started driving. No destination in mind. Just away. Away from the hypocrisy, the fake smiles, the polite backstabs. I ended up at a gas station off some back road just past the river, staring at myself in the bathroom mirror while cold water dripped from my face. My eyes looked sunken, older than they had a year ago. The lines on my forehead deeper. I hadn't shaved in days. I looked like a guy who got hit by a truck and just kept walking. I pulled out my phone, opened my email, typed out a short message to my manager in Berlin. Subject, taking a short leave. Message, something's come up back home. I need a few weeks to handle personal matters. I'll work remote where I can. Thanks for understanding. I hit send. Then I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes and stared at the steering wheel. I didn't have a plan. No revenge scheme. No righteous mission. Just a painful hole in my chest that wouldn't fill. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to my childhood home. My parents had downsized after my siblings and I moved out, but the house was still in the family. My Uncle Don lived there now. He was one of the few relatives who never took sides during the divorce fallout. He opened the door before I even knocked. Aaron. Hey, Uncle D. He blinked at me, then stepped aside without a word. Inside smelled like wood polish and old books. The wallpaper hadn't changed since I was 10. He offered me a coffee, and I sat at the kitchen table while he rummaged through the cabinets. You here for the wedding? He asked eventually, glancing over his shoulder. He didn't press. Just handed me a mug and sat across from me, folding his hands like a patient therapist. After a few sips, he said, People are talking. I figured. He nodded. Let them talk. You're not the villain. I didn't reply. He leaned back in his chair. You know, when your dad passed away last year, your brother tried to rewrite that story, too. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? He made a big show at the funeral, talking about how close they were, how he visited every weekend. None of it was true. He barely called your dad, but no one questioned it, because it sounded nice. I stared at the coffee in my hands. That's what people do, Uncle Don said. They rewrite things so they can sleep better at night. That sat with me for a long time. I stayed with him for 2 days. Didn't tell anyone. Just helped him fix a few things around the house. Tightened a loose banister. Rewired the garage light. For a while, it felt like I was repairing something deeper, something inside myself. The third morning, I made a decision. I wasn't running anymore. I drove back into town, straight to my mom's house. She opened the door looking like she hadn't slept in a week. Her hair was in a messy bun, and she was still in her robe. Aaron, she said, stunned. Hi, Mom. Come in. Please. We sat in the living room, the same place where Claire once unwrapped Christmas presents with my name on them. The memories clung to the air like smoke. I want to make something clear, I said. I'm not here to apologize. She nodded. I know. I'm also not here to pretend like I'm okay with what happened. I'm not. I probably never will be. She swallowed hard. Aaron, I didn't know how to handle it. I still don't. You chose Jason, I said, whether you meant to or not. She looked like she might cry, but I didn't comfort her. That day I left for Berlin, I continued. I was grieving 2 losses. My wife and my family. I'm sorry, she whispered. I stood. I didn't come here for closure. I came to say I'm done letting people define my story. And with that, I left. It was the first time in over a year I felt like I had control over anything. That night, I reopened an old folder on my laptop, one I hadn't touched in years. It was labeled CAD Projects. Before I met Claire, I used to freelance designs for small architecture firms. Residential renovations, mostly. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. Sketching layouts, running simulations, seeing a project take shape from nothing. Claire never liked it. Said it was low ROI and a waste of your engineering degree. So I stopped. But now, Sitting on that creaky guest bed at my uncle's place, I opened one of the old files and started tweaking it. An hour passed, then 2, then 5. I didn't realize how much I'd missed it. Within a week, I had 3 new design concepts. Within a month, I had 2 local clients through word of mouth. By the end of the 3rd month, I was pulling in more from freelance than I ever did in Berlin. And the best part? No one knew. No one in my family. Not Jason. Not Claire. It was mine. I moved out of my uncle's house into a small loft on the edge of town. Exposed brick, big windows, the kind of space you'd see in a magazine. I filled it with plants and sketches and the smell of burnt coffee. It felt like me again. I even got a call from a design agency in Berlin that had seen some of my new renders online. They offered a part-time remote consulting role. And just like that, I was building a life that wasn't defined by what I'd lost. It was defined by what I was choosing. I wasn't healed yet. Far from it. Some nights, I still woke up sweating, heart racing, a phantom echo of Claire's voice in my ears. Some mornings, I stared at my phone, wondering what I'd say if she ever called again. But I was rebuilding. One project, one choice, one breath at a time. Then, one evening, just as I was packing up my tools after a site visit, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Aaron, it's Emily. I'm sorry to text out of nowhere, but I think you need to see this." Emily was Claire's cousin. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. Attached was a photo. Jason, sitting alone at a bar. Eyes red, tie loosened, slumped forward like a man who'd been hit by a truck and hadn't stopped walking. Below it was a message. She left him. I stared at the screen and felt nothing. No joy, no pain, no vindication, just silence. But that silence said more than any scream ever could, because now they were the ones unraveling. And I was just getting started. But the full extent of what happened next, the chaos, the fallout, the confrontation I never saw coming, that's where things truly turned. I stared at that message for a long time. She left him. Just 3 words, and yet they echoed louder than anything Claire had screamed at me during that phone call the night of the wedding. Louder than the silence Jason had kept after I torched their little fantasy with a single sentence. Louder than the quiet I'd found in Berlin or the hum of my new loft's heater in the dead of night. She left him. I sat in the front seat of my car, engine idling in the parking lot of the duplex I was helping redesign for a client, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't respond to Emily. I didn't ask why or how. I didn't need to. Jason wasn't built to last. Not in relationships. Not in anything. He was good at beginnings. At attention. At flattery. But he couldn't maintain. He couldn't stand boredom. Or flaws. Or the discomfort of being someone's safe place instead of their constant adventure. Claire needed someone to worship her. Jason needed someone to challenge him. They deserved each other, until they didn't. But I wasn't here to pick through the rubble of their disaster. I was here because something in me had shifted. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But steadily, like a tide I hadn't noticed rising until it touched my feet. For the first time in over a year, I didn't just want to move on. I wanted to correct the record. Not out of bitterness. Out of principle. Because Jason and Claire hadn't just betrayed me. They'd tried to erase me. Reframe me as a passive background character in their rewritten story. Turn the truth into hearsay and my silence into endorsement. And even now, especially now, that Claire had left him, I knew Jason would try to control the narrative again. He always did. If she left him, it wouldn't be his fault. It would be stress. Or her mood swings. Or, eventually me. He'd turn the story around. Again. And for once, I wanted to be ahead of it. Not just for revenge, but for clarity. So I started planning. Step 1 was gathering information. I texted Emily back the next morning. "Appreciate you reaching out. Not surprised. What happened exactly?" Her reply came almost instantly. She found out he was cheating. Again. Of course. With who? Someone from work. And get this, married. Sound familiar? I almost laughed. It wasn't even ironic at this point. It was just tragic. A snake eating its own tail. How bad was the fallout? Nuclear. She packed up and left within an hour. Took the dog. Told Aunt Margie everything. Including how Jason lied about you giving them your blessing. Did she admit the affair started when we were married? Sort of. She tried to play it down. Said it was complicated. But Aunt Margie's no idiot. She's pissed. She called your mom and tore into her too. I leaned back in my chair, letting that sink in. The spin was unraveling. The narrative threads they wove so tightly had begun to fray. But it still wasn't enough. Because even if they admitted to a few sins now, it didn't change the damage they'd done. The people who looked at me with pity at family events. The whispers. The relatives who cut me off after the wedding fallout. I wasn't looking for public pity. I was looking for truth to be seen. And I had an idea. There was one person who'd always been obsessed with setting the record straight. My dad. Before he passed, he kept meticulous files on everything. He was the kind of man who still printed out bank statements and labeled them by month. We used to tease him for it, Jason especially. "You're not running the CIA, Dad," he once joked. "You're retired." But I remembered something. The year before he died, Dad started scanning everything, backing it all up to a drive in case anything happened. He made a big deal of showing me. "You're the tech guy," he'd said. "If something happens to me, you'll know how to access it." At the time, I shrugged it off. Now, I was curious. I drove back to Uncle Don's and asked him if he still had the box of Dad's files. He did. It took me an hour to find the thumb drive, labeled LTB 2021. My dad's initials. I plugged it into my laptop and started sifting through folders. Most of it was boring. Pension plans, medical records, home repair receipts. But one folder caught my eye. Family emails. I clicked. There were hundreds. Emails between my dad and Jason. And some, a lot, actually, between my dad and Claire. I opened the earliest one from her. The date? 6 months before she and I separated. Subject line. "Need advice. Please don't tell Aaron." I clicked. My stomach turned as I read it. She wasn't just confiding in my dad about her doubts. She was planting seeds, talking about how I was emotionally unavailable, how she felt ignored, how she worried I didn't want a family. She even referenced Jason. "Sometimes it feels like Jason understands me in ways Aaron doesn't." I know that sounds bad, but I just needed someone to talk to. And Dad's response. "Claire, I care about you, but I'm not comfortable discussing Aaron behind his back. If you're having problems, you need to speak with him directly." My throat tightened. He tried to do the right thing. But there were more emails. Dozens of them. Claire pressing. Manipulating. Jason chiming in, framing our marriage as doomed. All while I was still taking her to brunch and writing her love notes on post. It's like a fool. But then came the kicker. An email from Jason to Claire, dated 2 weeks before I confronted her. Subject line, "I'll talk to him soon. He won't suspect anything." My eyes scanned every word, every smug sentence. They planned it. They coordinated the breakup. Jason had even pitched the idea of getting ahead of it by spinning it as a peaceful split. I sat back in my chair, shaking. This wasn't just cheating. This was premeditated character assassination. They didn't just want to be together. They wanted to be seen as justified. I copied everything, backed it up in 3 places. Step 1 of the plan was complete. Step 2? Gathering allies. I called Emily again. "Do you still talk to Aunt Margie?" I asked. "Sometimes." "What?" "I need a favor." I sent her 3 of the emails. Carefully chosen. Just enough to show Claire's manipulation and Jason's planning. Nothing explicit. Just implications. Seeds. I knew Aunt Margie still held weight in the family. She was the kind of woman people listened to at Thanksgiving without even realizing they were being redirected like cattle. Emily called me back that night. She's furious. Good. She says if you want to tell your side, she'll host something at her place. Just family. She says it's time. I nodded slowly. Let's do it. We picked a date. 2 weeks from then. Enough time for the Claire and Jason mess to fester. Enough time for people to start asking questions again. In the meantime, I kept working. I met with clients. Took walks. Cooked meals from scratch. But beneath all of that, I was laying bricks. Step by step. And then, one day before the gathering, I got an unexpected call. From Claire. The screen lit up with her name. My heart didn't even flutter. I answered. "Hi," I said flatly. Her voice was quiet. "I heard you've been digging. You mean uncovering the truth?" She sighed. "Aaron, can we just meet? Please. No drama. Just talk." I paused. This wasn't part of the plan. But sometimes, the best plans leave room for improvisation. "Sure," I said. "Name the place." We met the next day. Same cafe where I first spilled that latte on her years ago. Full circle. She wore sunglasses even though we were indoors. Her hair was pulled back tight. She looked like she hadn't slept. I took my time sipping my coffee. "You know I didn't mean for this to happen like it did," she started. "Yes, you did," I said calmly. "I've read your emails." She stiffened. "What?" "To my dad. To Jason. You weren't just cheating. You were orchestrating. She swallowed hard. Those were private. And you made them my father's problem. You involved him. You lied to my family. You rewrote our entire marriage so you could be seen as the victim. She didn't deny it. Just stared at me. What do you want? There it was. Not an apology. A negotiation. I don't want anything, I said. But tomorrow, when I tell our family the truth, I want you to stay silent. She flinched. You're going to destroy Jason. He did that himself. I'll look like a monster. I smiled. No, you'll look like the truth. She stared at me, eyes glassy. And for the first time, she didn't have a rebuttal. The meeting ended in silence. But the next day, that's when everything shifted. That's when the story began to change. That's when people started remembering who I was and what I survived. But what happened at that family gathering? That's a story on its own. And it didn't go how anyone expected. The day of the gathering felt like walking into a storm I'd been watching build for over a year. Not the loud, explosive kind, but the quiet kind. Heavy clouds, static in the air, and the unsettling knowledge that something was about to break. I arrived early to Aunt Margie's house. A pale blue colonial tucked at the edge of town with hydrangeas out front and the faint smell of cinnamon always floating from the kitchen. She was setting up extra folding chairs in the living room. Everyone's coming, she told me, eyes sharp but kind. Even your mom. Jason, too. I nodded. Claire. She gave me a look. Didn't invite her. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. The room filled slowly. My mother walked in with a Tupperware of lemon bars, like it was just another Sunday potluck. She looked tired, worn in a way that didn't come from age, but regret. Jason arrived last. Alone. No ring. No smile. He gave me a nod when he walked in, like we were old war buddies who hadn't spoken since the armistice. I didn't return it. When everyone had settled, cousins, aunts, uncles, even Grandma in her armchair with a crocheted blanket on her knees, Aunt Margie stood up and cleared her throat. I called this meeting, she said, because this family's been walking around with blinders on for far too long. People were hurt. People were lied to. And I think we owe it to each other, and especially to Aaron, to listen to the truth for once. Everyone turned to me. I stood, calm. No anger. No theatrics. Just the truth. I'm not here to fight, I began. Or get revenge. I've already moved on. Built a new life. Found peace. My eyes flicked briefly to Jason, who sat stiffly near the fireplace, arms crossed. But peace doesn't mean silence. And silence is what allowed a lie to replace what actually happened. I paused. Then I pulled a printed email from my pocket and read it aloud. It was the one from Jason to Claire, the one where he said he'd talk to me soon and that I wouldn't suspect anything. The phrasing was casual, almost flippant, but the intent was undeniable. People started shifting in their seats. Whispers started. I didn't share this to humiliate anyone. I continued. But for the past year, I've watched my own family treat me like I was either too fragile or too distant to speak for myself. Meanwhile, Jason and Claire spun a version of events that made them look like they fell in love by accident, like I was some footnote who gracefully bowed out. I held up more printed emails. Claire's manipulations. Her attempts to paint our marriage as broken before she ever tried to fix it. My father's attempts to stay neutral, and how they ignored him anyway. My dad knew, I said. He tried to stay out of it, but he saw the truth, and he archived it. All of it. There was a long silence. Then Grandma, quiet for most of the meeting, spoke up. You knew? She asked Jason. He opened his mouth, closed it, then muttered, It wasn't like that. I turned to him. Then explain. Right now? To everyone. He stood, visibly sweating. Claire and I didn't plan to hurt you. We were just drawn together. It wasn't premeditated. That email says otherwise, I said. It was a joke, he snapped. Context matters. Aunt Margie snorted. So it's all a joke now. Jason looked around, realizing how few eyes still backed him. His usual confidence was gone. His smirk replaced with something close to panic. My mother stood slowly. Jason, she said, voice trembling, I believed you. I defended you. But you lied to me. To all of us. I didn't lie, he said weakly. I just didn't tell the whole story. And what story were we supposed to believe? She asked. That Claire left Aaron because she grew apart from him, and you just happened to be there? That it was destiny? Jason said nothing. I enabled this, she whispered, turning to me. And I'm sorry, Aaron. I should have seen it. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just nodded. because her words, even late, meant something. I'm not asking for an apology, I told the room. Not anymore. I'm asking you all to remember that silence can be just as cruel as betrayal. That it's not brave to stay neutral when someone's rewriting the truth. I turned back to Jason. And as for you, I want nothing from you. No contact. No explanation. No relationship. His jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He didn't have to. Because his world, the one where he was the charming golden child who could do no wrong, was collapsing. Not with a bang, but with polite nods and averted eyes. That's how it always ends for people like him. Not with scandal, but with quiet shame and isolation. The meeting wrapped with scattered conversations and hushed apologies. I stayed long enough to speak to a few cousins who offered sincere support. Even Grandma took my hand and squeezed it, eyes misty. And Jason? He left without saying goodbye. I went back to my loft that night and sat on the balcony, sipping tea as the city lights flickered beyond the trees. There was no adrenaline, no euphoric rush, just closure. Clean. Final. The next week, Emily sent me a message. Jason's moving out of state. Says he needs a fresh start. Not many people are returning his calls. What about Claire? No one knows. She blocked half the family. Rumor is, she's in New York. Alone. I didn't ask for more. I didn't care. Because my story, my version, had finally been heard. And not in anger. In clarity. I kept freelancing, taking on bigger projects, even mentoring a few younger designers from the local college. My mother came to visit a month later. She brought old photo albums and offered to help repaint my kitchen. We didn't talk about Jason. We didn't have to. She knew the damage had been done, but she was trying. In her own way. That mattered more than any apology ever could. One evening, as I walked home from a client meeting, I passed by a bookstore window and saw something in the reflection, me. Standing tall, shoulders back, eyes calm. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see a man who'd been broken. I saw a man who recovered, who rebuilt, who rewrote the ending, not with vengeance, but with truth. And that was enough. Because revenge isn't about rage. It's about release. And as I walked past that window, the wind shifting softly behind me, I whispered the words I never got to say that day in court, or at the wedding, or in all those sleepless Berlin nights. You don't get to define me anymore. And I meant it.